In this video, we're going to take a look at the min-max function of the Fluke 87 meter. For this demonstration, we're going to be using a Fluke 87 Series 3 meter. The original Fluke 87 and the newest Fluke 87 Series 5 meters have very similar setup procedures and capabilities. The Fluke 87 meter has 3 different min-max settings and 3 corresponding response times. These settings are 1 second response time, 100 millisecond response time, and then what's called a peak min-max setting. The response time for this peak min-max setting is 1 millisecond on the original Fluke 87, and it's 250 microseconds on the Fluke 87 Series 3 and Series 5 meters. During automotive electrical system diagnosis, only 2 of these settings are commonly used. That is the 100 millisecond response time min-max record function and the peak min-max function. So we're going to focus on these 2 only. Before we begin performing measurements using the peak min-max function, it's important to know a couple of things. First of all, we can use this min-max record function for voltage measurements, resistance measurements, and current measurements. The next thing we need to be aware of is that anytime we activate the min-max function, the meter is going to be locked into whatever range it was in prior to activating the min-max record feature. What that means is that we need to manually select the most appropriate range before we proceed. Finally, we need to be aware that when we activate min-max, we disable the automatic shutdown feature that this Fluke 87 meter has. So this meter is going to continue recording for as long as necessary. Okay, let's take a look at the use of the 100 millisecond response time min-max record function. This is the default min-max setting. All we have to do to activate this feature is push the min-max button. With the 100 millisecond response time min-max record function active, the meter is going to emit a tone every time a new minimum and maximum value is obtained. Right now I'm measuring the current draw of the rear window wiper motor. Notice that the current value fluctuates as the wiper moves back and forth on the window. This is an ideal time to use the 100 millisecond response time min-max record feature because this signal is slowly fluctuating. With the 100 millisecond min-max record function active, the meter is displaying a live value. Note the numerical information on the screen as well as the analog bar graph along the bottom of the screen. You can see that the values are updating in real time. If the min-max button is depressed a second time, the display switches from a live value to display the maximum value. 2.04 amps of current is the maximum value that has been recorded thus far. If we push the min-max button another time, we're now displaying the minimum value that has been recorded since we activated the min-max function. Notice 0 amps is the minimum value that we've obtained. If we push the min-max button another time, we're now displaying the mean average of all of the samples that the meter has taken since the min-max function was activated. This is a continually updating mathematical average. When the min-max button is depressed an additional time, we go back to the live reading display. With the increasing complexity of vehicle electrical systems, it's important to be able to validate serial data communication between controllers. This vehicle uses the J1850 VPW communication protocol. Because of this, I have my meter leads connected to pins 2 and pin 5 of the 16-pin J1962 OBD2 data link connector. Pin 2 is dedicated to the J1850 VPW communication protocol, and pin 5 is the signal ground. Now, by looking in the service manual, we would be able to determine that the voltage values for this communication protocol are 0 and 7 volts. Now, we can see that we have some activity here. We can see that analog bar graph moving. We can see a little bit of a fluctuating voltage value. But this really isn't good enough to have a conclusive diagnosis. So what we're going to want to do is activate the peak min-max function and see if the values that we capture are close to the published 0 and 7 volt values we obtained from service information. Before we can activate min-max, remember that we first have to manually adjust the most appropriate range. Right now we're in the 4 volt range. Since our expected values are 0 and 7 volts, this range is not going to be adequate. I'm manually going to select the 40 volt range by pushing the range button twice. Now I'm going to depress the min-max button, which activates the default 100 millisecond setting. Next, I'm going to push the peak min-max button. With peak min-max active, I can now look at my maximum value, which is very close to 7 volts. I can push the min-max button a second time and see that my minimum value is very close to 0 volts. We have now validated that communication is taking place on this serial data line.